Chapter 367. There were countless large sects and sects in the Jianghu, among which the 9 major families were the easiest to change. Sects relied on the inheritance of cultivation methods. Even if the people of the sect died, as long as someone obtained the cultivation method and was willing to rebuild the sect, the entire sect would not be destroyed. Compared to sects, families relied on bloodlines to pass down their inheritance. This kind of thing naturally had a certain disadvantage, and there were too many limitations. Therefore, the 9 major families in the Jianghu were now thinking of ways such as marriage alliances, or changing the system to make themselves more powerful. At the same time, they would also make fewer mistakes. As one of the top 3 among the 9 major families, the Xiahou clan was already powerful enough. Therefore, what the Xiahou clan sought now was stability, which could be seen from the system of the Xiahou clan. In the Xiahou clan, except for the patriarch who had been in seclusion for a long time, even the patriarch could not make a decision. Although Xiahou was the patriarch, there were more than 10 elders above him. These elders might not be as powerful as Xiahou, but they were extremely experienced people in the Jianghu. These people did not have actual power, but they could stop what Xiahou wanted to do. The purpose was to keep Xiahou in check and balance as the patriarch, preventing him from doing things his own way and bringing the Xiahou clan into the abyss. Therefore, in the Xiahou clan, if Xiahou wanted to make some changes, he had to consider all aspects and convince all the elders. It could be said that being the patriarch of the Xiahou clan was not an ordinary kind of tiring. Although the rules of the Xiahou clan could prevent the patriarch from making any overly drastic decisions and bringing the Xiahou clan into the abyss, it also slowed down the development of the Xiahou clan and made the system a little overstaffed. At this time, more than 10 elders were sitting in the meeting hall of the Xiahou clan. They were all old, but their strength was not weak. Among these elders, the weakest had the cultivation of the oneness of heaven and man realm in the past, and the stronger ones were even martial Dao masters in the past. However, they were too old and had reached the limit of their lifespans. Even martial Dao masters did not have the chance to fight, so they gave up their power and cultivated in the clan in peace. Xiahou walked into the hall and sat on the main seat. He looked around and said indifferently, "Elders, why have you summoned me here?" The oldest among them, an old man with white hair and beard, who could barely keep his eyes open, said slowly, "I heard that you're going to use the power of the Xiahou family to suppress the Guanzhong torture room." The Xiahou clan was only so big. Before they came, Xiahou had already guessed what they wanted to do. Xiahou couldn't help but snort coldly. "So what? Great Elder, do you have any objections?" The Great Elder was of the same generation as the patriarch of the Xiahou clan. He was also a martial Dao master in the past, but the patriarch of the Xiahou clan in that generation was even more amazing, and had been suppressing the Great Elder. As a result, the Great Elder never had a chance to stand out in the Xiahou clan, even when his lifespan was coming to an end. However, although the Great Elder was not good enough, he wanted to train his descendants to take the position of the patriarch. Unfortunately, none of his descendants were useful. After a few decades, he finally produced a talented descendant, but he happened to be of the same generation as Xiahou. He was directly suppressed by Xiahou and failed to compete for the position of the patriarch. Therefore, over the years, the Great Elder was the one who opposed Xiahou the most. Sometimes, Xiahou even wished that the old thing could die as soon as possible. His life was a waste of resources, and he could not bring any benefits to the Xiahou clan. The Great Elder said slowly, "Patriarch, you have to know that you are the patriarch of the entire Xiahou clan. Every move you make represents the overall interests of the Xiahou clan. I've heard about the matter. Xiahou Wujiang was too spoiled by you. He suffered losses in the Jianghu, but he didn't learn anything. It's only right that he lost to others. When I roamed the Jianghu in the past, I was defeated again and again, but I didn't go back to the clan to ask for reinforcements. Also, although someone died this time, it wasn't a member of the Xiahou clan. It was just a right-hand man. What are you so excited about? You're even going to use the power of the Xiahou clan to suppress the Guanzhong torture room. Is there any benefit in doing so?" Xiahou said coldly, "No benefit? Old 7 is a member of the Xiahou clan. If the Xiahou clan doesn't even fart after he died, wouldn't we be a laughingstock if the news got out? The great elder still said slowly, Patriarch, to put it bluntly, that dead right-hand man was just a dog raised by the Xiahou clan. If he let the dog bite someone and the dog was killed, we could just raise another one. Why did we have to sacrifice him? Xiahou slammed the table and shouted angrily, Old Seven is my brother. The great elder put away his slow demeanor and stared at Xiahou. He said coldly, Patriarch, don't forget what your surname is. He's just an outsider. The one who has the blood of the Xiahou clan in his veins is your clansman. Because of this matter, I feel that I've suffered a great loss even if I sacrifice the life of a collateral disciple of the Xiahou clan. Not to mention that the Guanzhong torture room itself is not to be trifled with. You're the patriarch, so you naturally have to consider the interests of the Xiahou clan. If you're not considerate enough, then it's up to us old fogies to think for you. As long as we're here, you can't use any of your power. The lives of the Xiahou clan's cultivators are very precious and cannot be wasted on something so insignificant. The other elders echoed the great elder's words. Almost 90% of the people present would stand on the great elder's side, while the remaining 10% would remain neutral. These people weren't purposely making things difficult for Xiahou. They were merely acting out of interest. Although elders like them no longer held any real power, their children and descendants were still in the Xiahou clan. They naturally had to think about their children and descendants. Therefore, if Xiahou wanted to do anything, he would have to give their descendants a certain amount of benefit. Once they realized that Xiahou had too much power in his hands and wanted to stir up trouble, they would have to suppress Xiahou. Looking at these old fogies in front of him, Xiahou gnashed his teeth in hatred. He, this patriarch, was incomparably domineering in the eyes of other martial artists, but he himself only felt aggrieved, abnormally aggrieved. Xiahou stood up fiercely and said in a cold voice, Fine, fine, fine. You all consider for the sake of the Xiahou clan's interests. But today, I'm only taking revenge for a personal grudge. I won't use the Xiahou clan's power. In a while, I'll personally go and find Guan Xiyu to ask for the person. Finished talking, Xiahou flicked his sleeves and left. One of the elders moved in front of the great elder and asked rather worriedly, Great elder, we refuted patriarch like that today. Nothing will happen, right? The great elder said coolly, What can happen? Xiahou isn't an idiot either. He won't go and fight to the death with Guan Xiyu because of an outsider. He's currently in a fit of rage. At most, he'll just go to the Guanzhong torture room to vent his anger. Nothing will happen. This period of time, things have been going a little too smoothly for him. It's hard to avoid being inflated. We're also trying to calm him down and let him calm down. What's the role of us, these elders? Isn't it just to help correct Patriarch when he goes astray? Honest advice is unpleasant to the ear. There's nothing we can do even if Patriarch doesn't listen. Anyway, I'm doing this for his own good. Everyone present nodded in agreement. Just as Xiahou had decided to go to the Guanzhong torture room to find Guan Xiyu to ask for the person, the news of Ming Chen's death reached the Great Light Temple. Furthermore, due to the long journey, they only received news of Ming Chen's death and not his corpse. In the Vajrayard, Ming Chen's master, Huizhen, was stunned when he heard the news of Ming Chen's death. There was no anger or grief in his eyes, only endless sorrow. Huizhen was an elder of the Vajrayard. His cultivation base had long reached the oneness of heaven and man realm. However, he was not young either. He was already more than 100 years old, and his qi and blood had begun to decline. Ming Chen was not his only disciple, but he was his favorite disciple. This was because Ming Chen was very similar to him when he was young. They were both righteous but impulsive and easily angered. However, after so many years, Huizhen's temper had changed a lot after he suffered a few losses in the early years. Finally, he was enlightened as he grew older. However, he also lost the chance to become a martial Dao master. Although Ming Chen was not considered young, he was in the prime of his life. He still had a chance. As long as he could completely change his temper and understand the true meaning of the Furious Vajra Heart Sutra, he might have a chance to step into the peak of martial Dao in the future. It was a pity that Ming Chen did not survive this calamity in the end. He did not actually die at the hands of Chu Xiu. Instead, he died at the hands of his uncontrollable anger. However, although Huizhen knew this, he still had to take revenge for Ming Chen. This had nothing to do with other messy things. It was only because he was Ming Chen's master. It was as simple as that. Huizhen was not Teacher San. He could let go of his hatred for the sake of benefits when his own disciple died. He did not hate Chu Xiu, but he still wanted to kill Chu Xiu to take revenge. However, Huizhen was not sure if he could kill Chu Xiu with his own strength. The Great Light Temple's martial artists had extremely strong bodies. However, when a martial artist who specialized in cultivating the body grew old, once his qi and blood began to deteriorate, his own strength would also deteriorate very seriously. Whether he could kill Chu Xiu, who had an extremely strong battle record, in a one-on-one battle was still an unknown. Moreover, Chu Xiu was a torture officer of the Guanzhong torture room. He was considered an important figure in the Guanzhong torture room. If Huizhen wanted to kill Chu Xiu, he would first have to go through Guanxiu. When one reached the level of a martial Dao master, it was no longer something that he could interfere with. Therefore, Huizhen left his own monastery and went directly to the Vajrayard's first seat. Skunda the Venerable Su Yan. Su Yan was a generation older than Huizhen, but he was much younger than Huizhen. He was not even 100 years old. He looked like a tall, middle-aged monk with a masculine appearance. Chapter 368. The Great Light Temple had existed for tens of thousands of years, and had existed even before the great calamity of ancient times. Thus, there were several generations of disciples in the Great Light Temple. However, because of this, there would be cases of 200- or 300-year-old monks accepting a young disciple. This disciple's seniority was naturally very high. Su Yan was in such a situation. Among the warriors of the Su generation, he was considered relatively young. Huizhen walked into the courtyard and clasped his hands together. Junior martial uncle. In the past, when Su Yan was young, Huizhen was already a martial monk instructor. However, because of seniority, he could only call Su Yan martial uncle. He felt that it was a little awkward, so he added the word junior. This habit had not been changed until now. Seeing Huizhen, Su Yan sighed. I know about Mingchen's matter. Huizhen, my condolences. Grief appeared in Huizhen's eyes as he nodded. However, before he could say anything, Su Yan said, Huizhen, do you want me to go to the Guanzhong torture room to ask for Mingchen? However, I advise you to give up. I will not make a move, and the temple will not allow you to make a move. The grudges between Mingchen and Chu Xiu have ended with Mingchen's death. This matter is over. Why? Huizhen had a look of surprise on his face. He had never thought that Su Yan would actually say that. The warriors of the Vajra institution had always had a fiery temper. In Huizhen's opinion, even if he did not take the initiative to mention this matter, Su Yan would personally go to the Guanzhong torture room to ask for an explanation from Guanxiu. In the end, Su Yan did not intend to make a move, and even wanted to stop him. Su Yan sighed and said, It's news from the Guanzhong Disciplinary Hall. Senior Martial Brother Su Yun, the first seat of the Wangyan Zen Hall, owed the previous hall master Chu Kuanga a favor. He did not return this favor when Chu Kuanga was alive. Now that the Guanzhong torture room wants him to return this favor, Senior Martial Brother Su Yun has already agreed. You know the weight of Senior Martial Brother Su Yun's words. Since he has spoken, I cannot refuse and neither can you. Huizhen let out a sigh. His body, which was already old and clumsy, now appeared even more hunched. The first seat of the Raging Thought Zen Hall, Dragon Tree of Nine Wonders Su Yun, was the strongest existence amongst the first seats of the 3 great Zen halls, and the 6 great martial schools of the Great Radiance Monastery. He was acknowledged to be a powerful being who was second only to the abbot, Reverend Sakya, Su Ci. Moreover, Su Yun had an extremely high status in the Su generation. He used to be their eldest senior brother. As for why Su Ci had become the abbot in the end, it had always been a mystery to the outside world. This was because among the warriors of the Su generation, whether it was in the martial arts world or in the Temple of Great Light, Su Yun was the most famous. In the end, Su Ci had become the abbot. However, The relationship between the two parties did not change because of this. In the past, when Su Ci had just taken over the Temple of Great Light, Su Yin had given his all to help Su Ci stabilize the hearts of the people in the Temple of Great Light. It could be said that Su Ci was able to secure his position now without Su Yun's help. In the Light Temple, Su Yun's words were no different from those of the abbot. Since Su Yun said that he was prepared to return this favor, Su Yan could not refute and Huizhen could not refuse. Looking at Huizhen's hunched back, Su Yan shook his head helplessly. He had to give Su Yan face, but this was also because Ming Chen's position and strength were not enough. Therefore, the Light Temple could not take revenge for him. If the person who died was the most outstanding disciple of their Great Light Temple's younger generation, Wisdom King Zhongxian, then not only would Su Yan lose face, even if Abbot Su Ci did not want to take revenge, the entire Great Light Temple would still want to kill Chu Xiu to take revenge. The grudge with the Great Light Temple was temporarily put aside. Chu Xiu was currently recuperating in seclusion in the Guanxi land. Chu Xiu had also made use of the ferocious beast's heart he had obtained from the Skirich Tower. In fact, the best way to make use of the beast's heart was to bleed and refine it into a pill. Only then could the pill's effect be maximized. However, it was a pity that Chu Xiu did not have any alchemists under him, and he was a little worried about the alchemists in the Guanzhong Disciplinary Hall. Hence, he could only waste some and directly extract their blood to refine. As soon as the blood from the beast's heart entered his body, it was split into half by the glazed gold silk goo in Chu Xiu's body. The other half was like a burning flame that instantly ignited Chu Xiu's body. The ancient beast's power was unimaginable to the current warriors. At least, the intensity of this power was unique among all the pills that Chu Xiu had taken. While he was refining the ferocious beast's blood, Chu Xiu had also borrowed this energy to temper his great King Kong divine energy, causing the strength of his body to rise to a whole new level. After a few days, the Ghost Hand King suddenly knocked on the door of Chu Xiu's seclusion chamber. He said that Cheng Zhouhai was looking for him, and that it was urgent. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. The four regions of Guanzhong had their own way of doing things. Usually, they did not interfere with each other. If there was no incident that involved the entire Guanzhong torture room, they would rarely work together. Why was Cheng Zhouhai looking for him now? However, Chu Xiu was not in a life-or-death seclusion this time. His injuries were almost healed, and it was not a big deal to be interrupted. Therefore, Chu Xiu asked the Ghost Hand King to bring Cheng Zhouhai to the meeting hall. When Chu Xiu walked into the meeting hall, Cheng Zhouhai cupped his hands at Chu Xiu and said, "Congratulations to Official Chu for being promoted to the position of torture officer. I knew that Official Chu was not an ordinary person. Now, it seems that my judgment was very accurate." In the past, Cheng Zhouhai had a humorous personality and liked to joke around. However, his attitude towards Chu Xiu now was respectful and respectful. After all, his status was different. Now that Chu Xiu was a torture officer, he was on the same level as his master, Xiao Yi. His attitude naturally could not be the same as before. Thinking of this, Cheng Zhouhai sighed. In the past, he and Chu Xiu were both outstanding warriors of the younger generation in Guanzhong torture room. They were all on the same level, but Chu Xiu's advantage was more obvious. As a result, after a short time, Chu Xiu had already stood at the same level as his master. This also made Cheng Zhouhai sigh in his heart. This was luck. Even if some people were stronger than Chu Xiu, they did not have the same status as Chu Xiu. "Brother Cheng, there is no need for these polite words between us. What is the matter this time?" Chu Xiu asked someone to bring a cup of tea to Cheng Zhouhai and asked. Cheng Zhouhai looked solemn and said, "My master asked me to bring you a message. Xiahou the head of the Xiahou family, came from Eastern Qi and has already stepped into the Guangdong area. Looking at his appearance, it is obvious that he is coming straight for you, so you have to be careful." Chu Xiu was stunned and said in surprise, "Xiahou came alone?" Cheng Zhouhai nodded and said, "Only Xiahou came alone." Chu Xiu touched his chin and showed a trace of doubt in his eyes. The Xiahou family did not play by the rules. The Great Guangming Temple had been settled, and Chu Xiu also guessed the Xiahou family's reaction. Either it was left unsettled, like the last time. Anyway, the person who died was not Xiahou Wujiang. Or it was to mobilize the power of the entire Xiahou family to suppress the Guanzhong torture room, such as finding some trouble for the Guanzhong torture room, and forcing the Guanzhong torture room to punish Chu Xiao. Now, as the head of the family, Xiahou Zhen personally took action. Did this mean that he valued Chu Xiao? However, for Xiahou Zhen himself, there was some suspicion of bullying the young, which was not good to say. Does the hall master know about this? Chu Xiao asked. Cheng Zhouhai nodded and said. The head of the Xiahou family came in person. As soon as he stepped into the Guangdong area, Master had already sent someone to inform the hall master. Chu Xiao smiled and said, since the hall master knows, I don't have to worry about anything. With the protection of the hall master, Xiahou Zhen can't stir up any trouble. On the ranking list, the hall master is above Xiahou Zhen. Cheng Zhouhai was a little speechless when he heard this. It seemed that this person regarded the hall master as his own fighter. There was something the hall master had to do. However, if Cheng Zhouhai was the hall master, he would also choose to protect Chu Xiao. After all, Chu Xiao was now the face of the Guanzhong torture room, and the most outstanding disciple of the younger generation. If someone wanted to kill Chu Xiao, and the Guanzhong torture room sat back and did nothing, how could the people of the Guanzhong torture room stand by and do nothing? Just like the Xiahou family, because the person who died this time was the seventh uncle, the group of elders dared to stop Xiahou Zhen from taking revenge. But if the person who died this time was Xiahou Wujiang, it would be a little too much for the group of elders to stop him. At this time, in front of the gate of Jiuhua City where the Guanxi branch was located, Xiahou Zhen looked at the merchants and warriors coming and going in silence. At this time, Xiahou Zhen did not reveal the aura of a martial Dao grandmaster, but in the eyes of others, this middle-aged man wearing a luxurious brocade robe with an extraordinary aura was not someone to be trifled with. So even if Xiahou Zhen blocked the way, no one dared to scold or complain. As the head of the Xiahou family, Xiahou Zhen had not stepped out of the Xiahou family for several years. Everyone thought that being the head of the Xiahou family was a very honorable position, but in fact, only those who sat in this position knew how difficult it was. Just like what he was doing right now. He clearly wanted to take revenge for his own people, but as the patriarch, he was unable to use even the slightest bit of his strength, and he even had to personally take action. Was there anything more ironic than this? This time, Xiahou Zhen came alone. He couldn't use the power of the Xiahou clan because the elders prevented him from using it. However, he still had some trusted subordinates by his side, such as the seventh uncle. However, Xiahou Zhen didn't bring any of them because he knew that he probably wouldn't be able to kill Chu Xiao this time. After all, Chu Xiao was an elite of the younger generation of the Guanzhong torture room, and the face of the Guanzhong torture room. This was Guanzhong, and he came to the Guanzhong torture room to kill people. Would the Guanzhong torture room ignore him? Perhaps from the moment he stepped into Guanzhong, his whereabouts had already been reported. However, none of this mattered. Xiahou Zhen had to come this time to give himself an explanation, as well as an explanation to his trusted subordinates. Chapter 369. In the Guanxi branch, Cheng Zhouhai did not leave. After knowing that Guan Siyu would definitely make a move, Cheng Zhouhai also wanted to see the power of the fight between the two martial Dao masters. Cheng Zhouhai had been in the Guanzhong torture room for more than 10 years. He had been taken into the Guanzhong torture room since he was a teenager, but he had never seen Guan Siyu make a move. This was because Guan Siyu had completely stabilized the Guanzhong torture room at that time. All these years, the Guanzhong torture room had been seeking stability, so Guan Siyu did not have the chance to make a move. Perhaps there were a few times, but Cheng Zhouhai did not see it. There was some criticism about Guan Siyu's strength in the pugilistic world. Most people thought that Guan Siyu was not worthy of his current ranking. In the past, the previous hall master, Chu Kuanga's strength was outstanding and he had countless achievements. He once stopped a war with his martial arts alone, which made the pugilistic world gasp in admiration. Therefore, Chu Kuanga was ranked second on the honor roll at his peak. However, when Guan Siyu took over the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Kuanga had already spread the reputation of the Guanzhong torture room throughout the pugilistic world. It was equivalent to him inheriting the legacy of the Guanzhong torture room. so his achievements naturally could not be compared to Chu Kuanga's. However, because of the reputation of the Guanzhong torture room, he was still ranked 8th on the honor roll. This ranking was also criticized by the pugilistic world. Most people thought that Guan Xiyu's ranking was a little too high. Based on the few times he made a move, it was not amazing. How could he be ranked 8th on the honor roll? One had to know that the person ranked above Guan Xiyu was the Great Light Temple's Wangyan Zen Hall chief, Dragon Tree of Nine Wonders Master Su Yun. He was a dual cultivator of Zen, and was known as the existence with the highest Zen cultivation in the Great Light Temple. At a certain stage he was even more brilliant than Abbot Su Ci. The person ranked below Guan Xiyu was the Blue Dragon Society, Great Dragon Head, Crescent Green Dragon Butian Nan. He was an extreme madman who had killed countless people in his life. From a low-level killer in the Blue Dragon Society, it took him decades to become the Great Dragon Head. It was rumored that ever since Butian Nan started killing people, he had never used assassination methods. He would just walk up to his target and tell them that he was going to kill them. He was extremely arrogant, but he had never failed. Therefore, it was rumored that when Butian Nan made his move, he would only kill those he did not want to kill, and there was no one he could not kill. If someone could pay the price, he would even dare to kill the abbot of the Great Light Temple, or the heavenly master of Dragon Tiger Mountain. Sandwiched between the two of them, Guan Xiyu's radiance was naturally very dim. The Jianghu people also had a lot of controversy about her. As a member of the Guanzhong torture room, Qing Zhouhai naturally wanted Guan Xiyu's strength to be as strong as possible. Unfortunately, there were too many rumors in the pugilistic world. In addition, Guan Xiyu rarely fought. Even if he wanted to refute, he couldn't find a reason. Hence, Qing Zhouhai also wanted to see how strong Hall Master Guan was. Just as Qing Zhouhai was chatting with Chu Xiu in the Guanxi branch, an overwhelming pressure suddenly shrouded the entire Guanxi branch from the outside. It was as oppressive as a rainstorm, so much so that some people could not breathe. Chu Xiu and Qing Zhouhai looked at each other. Both of their eyes revealed a hint of seriousness as they walked out together. At this time, at the entrance of the Guanxi branch, Xiahou stood with his hands behind his back. The aura around him affected heaven and earth, causing a layer of dark clouds to condense in the sky above the entire Guanxi branch. It looked extremely terrifying. Xiahou was alone, but his powerful aura was as terrifying as that of a powerful army. It made the people under Chu Xiu not dare to even move. This was the power of a martial Dao master. The power of a single person could fight against a powerful army. The realm of oneness of heaven and man only had a vague understanding of power and heaven and earth. On the other hand, a martial Dao master condensed the true martial core in his body, and could truly affect the existence of heaven and earth. Cultivating martial arts, understanding heaven and earth. A martial Dao master could absorb the power of heaven and earth for their own use at any time. As long as the internal force did not erupt too fiercely, then a martial Dao master could absorb the power of heaven and earth unlimitedly, and transform it into internal force to hurt people. Therefore, the saying that a martial Dao master could fight against a powerful army was not an exaggeration, but it really existed. A martial artist in the oneness of heaven and man realm could be killed by the number of people, but when it came to the existence of a martial Dao master, it could no longer be killed by the number of people. No matter how powerful your army was, even if no one was afraid of death, they would still be killed. This was why the real pellet state was called a martial Dao master. Only those who could establish a sect were qualified to be called a martial Dao master. Even if there was only one person in a sect, as long as he reached the martial Dao master realm, he was qualified to be a major sect in the underworld. In the eyes of the real major sects in the underworld, whether there was a martial Dao master in charge was a very obvious watershed. As for those martial arts forces without a martial Dao master in charge, in the eyes of the real major sects, they were just small fries. At this time, watching Chu Xiu walk out of the Guanxi branch, Xiahou looked at Chu Xiu without the slightest anger and hatred, only calmness. "You are Chu Xiu? You're younger than I expected." Xiahou, as his father, naturally knew Xiahou Wujiang's arrogance and pride. As a result, Xiahou Wujiang was defeated by this Chu Xiu again and again, and even seventh uncle was killed. Xiahozhen was really curious about Chu Xiu. At this time, facing a powerhouse of Xiahozhen's level, Cheng Zhouhai, who was next to Chu Xiu, already felt a little depressed under Xiahozhen's aura, but Chu Xiu was still able to remain calm. Hearing that, Chu Xiu merely said indifferently, "Patriarch Xiahou, you've exceeded my expectations. I didn't expect this matter to attract you to take action personally. Patriarch Xiahou, do I, Chu Xiu, really have such great prestige that I can attract a martial Dao Grandmaster powerhouse to seek revenge on me? Isn't Patriarch Xiahou afraid of being said by the people in the underworld for bullying the weak?" Xiahozhen looked up at the sky, and he said calmly, "Seventh brother died in your hands, which is beyond my expectation. I have known seventh brother for more than 10 years. He is a very persistent guy. His master is a master from the Eastern Qi military, who is proficient in spear skills and bow. But seventh brother said that he was born stupid, so he only specialized in one. If he didn't practice one to the acme of perfection, he would resolutely not practice the second. This made his master very helpless. Isn't such a person a little stupid?" Later, seventh brother's master was killed by the enemy, and he was also seriously injured and on the verge of death. I saw him on the road, and threw him a bottle of medicinal pills. Seventh brother came back to life with this bottle of medicinal pills, took his revenge, and found out my identity. He went to the Xiahou clan to find me, saying that he would use his life to repay my kindness. I thought he was joking and just wanted to use this as an excuse to come to the Xiahou clan to earn a living as a follower, so I agreed. I didn't expect him to be serious. What seventh brother has done for me over the years is worth countless bottles of medicinal pills. He said he would use his life to repay my kindness, and he really put his life on the line. Now that seventh brother is dead, I'm not here as the patriarch of the Xiahou clan, but as an elder brother to seek justice from you." Chu Xiu sneered and said, "Justice? It was your son who wanted to kill me. If I didn't kill him, I would be the one who died. Who would I seek justice from?" Xiahozhen said expressionlessly, "Seventh brother addressed me as patriarch and treated me like a father or brother. If I didn't come this time, not only would others be bitterly disappointed, but I would also not be able to get over this." At this moment, a powerful voice came from the side. "Unfortunately, you came for nothing. Xiahozhen, you personally took part in a grudge between juniors. This is against the rules of the martial world." Guan Xiyu walked over from the long street. Behind him was the third leader of the Criminal Apprehension Division, Xi Ming, and over 10 experts from the division. Xiahozhen turned his gaze to Guan Xiyu, but there was not a hint of emotion in his eyes. It would be strange if Guan Xiyu didn't appear here. Xiahozhen hadn't interacted much with Guan Xiyu, although they were of the same generation. When Guan Xiyu took over the Guanzhong torture room, Xiahozhen hadn't taken over the position of patriarch yet. Although they had met later on, they could only be considered acquaintances. Xiahozhen looked at Guan Xiyu and said in a low voice, "Hall Master Guan, I only want an explanation. It has nothing to do with seniority. Chu Xiu killed my men, so I want him to pay the price. This isn't too much, right?" Guan Xiyu said indifferently, "It's already too much for you to come to the Guanzhong torture room to ask for someone. Since you didn't interfere in the matters between juniors, I naturally wouldn't interfere either. But now that you've personally taken action as a hall master, I naturally won't sit by and watch someone take away my men from the Guanzhong torture room's territory. Xiahozhen, I know about the Xiahou family's situation. If you want to take revenge, you have to figure out the internal affairs of the Xiahou family first. Otherwise, it'll be very embarrassing for a dignified patriarch like you to always go into battle." Upon hearing Guan Xiyu's words, Xiahozhen's expression turned gloomy. After all, the Xiahou family was one of the 9 great aristocratic families. With so many eyes in the underworld watching, some matters couldn't be hidden from others. The underworld had also heard about the *T internal affairs of the Xiahou family. Now that Guan Xiyu saw Xiahozhen come alone, he understood what was going on. It was nothing more than internal strife in the family. Xiahozhen snorted coldly and said, "Hall Master Guan, you don't have to worry about my Xiahou family's internal affairs. However, I have to give you a piece of advice. You helped Chu Xiu this time, But will you still be able to help him when he causes so much trouble in the future? Chu Xiu isn't a stable person. The Guanzhong torture room is too small. I'm afraid it won't be able to accommodate him. Guan Xiu, you helped Chu Xiu this time. Sooner or later, you will regret it. How could Guan Xiu be provoked by Xiahou words? Taking a step forward, Guan Xiu's aura rose like a mountain. She said in a deep voice, "No one can take away my men from my Guanzhong torture room. Xiahou, I'll ask you one last time. Are you going to retreat or not?" Xiahou closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, they had turned a deep golden color. The power of his essence soul had stirred up a yuan qi storm that swept over. Xiahou's actions had already explained everything. Chapter 370. After Xiahou clan's spirit commanding art was cultivated to its peak, it could be said to have a qualitative leap. The most direct observation was that it could evolve mental energy into spirit power, which could directly materialize. It could draw in the world and had infinite power. At this moment, Xiahou's spirit power shone brightly. The surrounding heaven and earth power was stirred by him into a storm that surged towards Guan Xiu. In the early stages of Xiahou clan's spirit commanding art, it controlled people. It directly used mental energy to control the other party and the heaven and earth power. But at Xiahou's level, he was the one who controlled the world. The endless storm swept over hundreds of feet, and its power soared into the sky. A casual attack was dozens of times more terrifying than a unity of heaven and man realm warrior. At this moment, Guan Xiu also moved. He took a step forward and formed a seal with both hands to lift the world. It was as if he was carrying a mountain and blasted it at Xiahou. In that instant, endless ripples appeared in midair and shattered in the face of the immense power. An invisible force swept through the world, but the power was tangible. It directly tore apart the powerful storm set off by Xiahou's spirit power. Divine Power 9 Transformations, Moving Mountain. The power of this attack was extremely shocking, but Guan Xiu's figure did not stop. He pushed forward with one hand and seemed to stir casually. The surrounding heaven and earth essence energy rippled like flowing water and surged towards Xiahou. Wherever the ripples passed, the protruding stones on the ground were instantly turned to dust. One could imagine how terrifying this move was. This was one of Guan Xiu's Divine Power 9 transformations, stirring the sea. In the past, when the younger generation competed for the God Weapon Convention in the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Xiu had seen Yu Qi attack. He had used the moving mountain and stirring the sea of the 9 transformations. However, the difference between Yu Qi's use of these two moves and Guan Xiu's was like heaven and earth. Only when Guan Xiu used this move could he be considered to have some of the divine power's power. At this moment, Xiahou's expression changed slightly. Guan Xiu's power was somewhat beyond his imagination. The 3 realms of spirit condensation were divided into 3 steps: Martial Dao True Pellet, Real Fire Spirit Refinement, and Heaven and Earth Mystic. As long as one stepped into the 3 realms of spirit condensation, they could be called a Martial Dao Grand Master. However, most Martial Dao Grand Masters were in the first realm, and Xiahou was naturally the same. At this time, Xiahou could clearly feel that Guan Xiu should be at the real pellet state, but his power seemed to be far beyond him. He had already reached the real spiritual spirit refinement. As soon as the sea stirrer was unleashed, the surrounding world seemed to become a prison of the sea. Worldly yuan qi and spiritual energy were stirred, forming an inescapable net that pressed down on Xiahou. Xiahou's body shone brightly, and the radiance of his primordial spirit shrouded his entire body. Then, an illusory figure appeared behind him, holding a giant bow. The golden radiance of the primordial spirit condensed into an arrow. It looked somewhat similar to the 7th uncle's 13 soul-stealing arrows. As the essence soul arrow in Xiahou's hand shot out, golden light instantly filled the world. It tore through Guan Xiu's sea-stirring divine power, and headed straight for her glabella. The power of the soul was powerful, and it was very difficult to block it with power of the same element. Either the attacker also cultivated a secret technique of the soul, or they could only choose to block it with their own vital energy. In short, although the Yuan spirit was difficult to cultivate, and it was a little extreme, its might was still extremely terrifying. Guan Xiyu's expression didn't change. He formed a seal with both hands and formed a very strange seal. He calmly said, "Exorcism." A faint light bloomed, and an extremely strange figure appeared behind Guan Xiyu. It had 3 faces and 6 arms, but it was extremely thin and small. Its aura was extremely strange, and it was condensed from the power of the soul and the power of the world. As soon as the figure appeared, Xiahou Zhen's primordial spirit arrow began to melt. It wasn't blocked, but it seemed as if it didn't exist at all. It directly melted into the world. Moreover, it wasn't just the primordial spirit arrow. Under the influence of the figure, the golden light of the primordial spirit around Xiahou Zhen began to rapidly collapse. The figure actually had a great suppressive effect on the power of the soul. It was simply the nemesis of the Xiahou clan's spirit control technique. Moreover, it wasn't over yet. Guan Xiyu waved his hand. He didn't have a saber in his hand, but a piercingly cold saber gleam appeared around him. The dense saber gleam floated around Guan Xiyu like a tornado. As Guan Xiyu took a step forward, the saber gleam surged toward Xiahou Zhen. Within a radius of 300 meters, everything was enveloped by the boundless saber storm. The scene was simply terrifying. Divine Power 9 Transformations. Call the Wind. This series of exchanges made Chu Xiu, Cheng Zhouhai, and the others below dizzy. It wasn't easy to learn from a battle between 2 martial Dao masters. However, they could also see that Guan Xiyu had the upper hand. To be precise, Guan Xiyu's strength couldn't even be considered to have the upper hand. It was simply a crushing defeat. Moreover, Guan Xiyu's cultivation technique also had a great restraining effect on Xiahou Zhen. Guan Xiyu's secret cultivation technique, Divine Power 9 Transformations, wasn't passed down from ancient times. Instead, Guan Xiyu had researched it on his own. His Divine Power 9 Transformations contained the foundations of countless cultivation techniques. Among them, there were even fragments of powerful ancient cultivation techniques. Guan Xiyu forcibly combined them together and extracted their advantages. That was why it only had 9 forms, but it included all kinds of martial arts in the world. It could also restrain any martial arts technique. Its power was unpredictable and extremely powerful. Under the blade storm, Xiahou Zhen's eyes flashed with a cold glint. He shouted, and the golden spirit aura around his body turned into sharp blades. His aura soared into the sky, wanting to tear everything in front of him apart. The Xiahou clan's spirit driving art was good at offense, not passive defense. In front of Guan Xiyu, his spirit driving art hadn't been able to exert its power. If Guan Xiyu continued to suppress him, Xiahou Zhen couldn't imagine the consequences. However, at this moment, Guan Xiyu's figure suddenly appeared behind Xiahou Zhen. She formed a fist seal and slammed it down on Xiahou Zhen. It was still moving mountain. No one noticed when Guan Xiyu had changed his figure. Even Chu Xiu and the others, who had been watching Guan Xiyu fight in the outside world, didn't notice. A powerful force descended from all directions. Xiahou Zhen twisted the sharp primordial spirit blade in his hand, but it was already too late. The power of moving mountain descended like Mount Tai pressing down on him. Moreover, this move seemed to carry the power of the gods, causing the primordial spirit blade in Xiahou Zhen's hand to shatter with a loud bang. A huge wave of primordial spirit power mixed with Gang Qi erupted. Xiahou Zhen formed a seal with his hand, and the power of his soul drew upon the power of the world, condensing it into a shield in front of him. Unfortunately, the defensive power of the spirit-controlling art was somewhat lacking. With a loud bang, Xiahou Zhen's Yuan Qi shield shattered, and he was sent flying more than 30 meters away. His face was frighteningly pale. Xiahou Zhen stood where he was, and his pale face was slightly red. Anyone could see that Xiahou Zhen's internal organs had been injured, but he forced himself to not vomit blood. Xiahou Zhen stared at Guan Xiyu. After a while he said, "Guan Xiyu, I underestimated you. Most people in Jianghu also underestimated you. If Chu Kuang's brilliance did not cover you, you would have shone even brighter after taking charge of the Guanzhong torture room." Guan Xiyu said expressionlessly, The history of the Guanzhong torture room is very short compared to the large sects and families that have been passed down for thousands of years. Every generation of the Guanzhong torture room is a pioneer. Chu Kuanga and the other ancestors used their lives to open up the position of the Guanzhong torture room. Their brilliance will not stop me from shining. Instead, it will protect the Guanzhong torture room to move forward safely. The corners of Xia Hozhen's mouth twitched, and he turned to leave. This time he had suffered a loss, and he had miscalculated. Xia Hozhen came to Guanzhong alone to demand an explanation. In fact, he did not think that he could take away Chu Xiu from the Guanzhong torture room by himself, or do something to Chu Xiu. However, if he fought Guan Siyu in front of everyone, as long as he gained the upper hand, he would be able to leave calmly. He would be able to give Old Seven and his subordinates an explanation. He would also be able to let everyone see that he, Xia Hozhen, was a responsible family head. In the end, Xia Hozhen did not expect that Guan Siyu, who had always been very low-key and was thought by the people of the Jianghu to be unworthy of his ranking on the honor list, was so powerful. His cultivation was probably not far from the true fire spirit refinement stage. He had only seen 4 of Guan Siyu's 9 divine transformations, and he could not resist it. The difference between the two could be described as crushing. At this time, on Chu Xiu's side, Cheng Zhouhai and the others were also very excited when they saw Guan Siyu seriously injure Xia Hozhen in a few moves. Since their hall master was so powerful, they naturally felt honored as well. However, Chu Xiu was also narrowing his eyes at this time. He was thinking about something different. The others were thinking that they had underestimated Guan Siyu, but Chu Xiu was thinking about how strong Mei Qinglian was. Chu Xiu did not understand the darkness demon sex cultivation method, but Mei Qinglian had been hiding beside Guan Siyu for so many years, and could even faintly control her mind. One could imagine how strong Mei Qinglian was. The stronger one was, the stronger their mind was, especially people like Guan Siyu, who was known as the Iron Judge. For the sake of the Guanzhong torture room's rules, she would even cripple her own disciple. However, Mei Qinglian had been by Guan Siyu's side all these years. He did not know what methods she had used, but she could already influence most of Guan Siyu's decisions. This was shocking enough. Now Chu Xiu was also a little curious about what Mei Qinglian wanted to do. If she just wanted to use the Guanzhong torture room to hide her identity, then Mei Qinglian had already done it. She dared to reveal her martial Dao master cultivation in the Guanzhong torture room headquarters, which was enough to prove her influence on Guan Siyu. In the end, Mei Qinglian was still secretly plotting something. Could it be that she wanted Guan Siyu, a martial Dao master, to become her puppet? Chapter 371. After repelling Xia Hozhen, Guan Siyu turned her gaze to Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu hurriedly stood up and cupped his hands. "Many thanks for helping me, Hall Master." Guan Siyu nodded and said faintly, "The Guanzhong torture room has helped you deal with this matter. Next time, think twice before you act. Although the Guanzhong torture room has stabilized, it hasn't reached the point where we can expand at will." After reminding Chu Xiu, Guan Siyu directly left with her people. After nightfall, Chu Xiu didn't go to sleep, nor did he choose to cultivate. Instead, he waited in the room. Since Guan Siyu had come, then Mei Qinglian should have also come. He still remembered that Mei Qinglian had said that she had something for him to do. Sure enough, not long after, Mei Qinglian's figure walked out of the black mist. She had a lazy smile on her face. "The trouble has been resolved. You can relax now." Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "It wasn't a big trouble, but this time, I really didn't expect Hall Master Guan's strength to be this strong." Mei Qinglian glanced at Chu Xiu and said, "What else do you think? If Guan Siyu was really mediocre, do you think Chu Kuanga would have stood his ground and helped him become the new Hall Master before he died?" Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Saintess, you can play Guan Siyu in the palm of your hand. Your strength is even more terrifying than Guan Siyu's." Mei Qinglian tidied up the hair in front of her eyebrows and snorted, "There's no need to probe. My Een demon sex martial artists are good in this aspect. If I were stronger than Guan Siyu in a head-on fight, why would I need to hide by his side? By the way, you haven't forgotten what I told you last time, right?" Chushio said. Of course I haven't forgotten. Saintess, please tell me if you have any instructions. Mei Qinglian said. Don't worry, what I want you to do will be good for you. It will help you make a name for yourself in the demonic path. Have you heard of the World Sword Sect Conference? Chushio nodded and said, I've naturally heard of this. The Centennial Grand Meeting is a grand occasion for sword cultivators in the Jianghu. But what does this have to do with my demonic path? The so-called World Sword Sect meeting was a grand ceremony of sword principle held by the 5 major sword sects. Whether it was the 5 major sword sects or the numerous rogue cultivators in the Jianghu who use swords, they could all participate in it. They could compete in swordsmanship, discuss Tao, and learn from each other. Moreover, they would also give out some rewards to the most outstanding young sword principle experts in the meeting. As for the World Sword Sect meeting, Chushio vaguely remembered that in the original plot, the scale seemed to be quite large. However, because only swordsmen participated, other than the 5 major sword sects and some warriors who use swords, very few people paid attention to this matter. Mei Qinglian sneered and said, originally, it had nothing to do with it. The 5 major sword sects closed their doors and played internally. We demonic path people are not that bored, so naturally, we won't interfere. But this time, the 5 major sword sects insisted on making a big move. This time, not only sword cultivators can participate in the World Sword Sect meeting, but the warriors and elites of other sects can also participate. The most important thing is the reward. In the past World Sword Sect meeting, there were almost only 2 rewards. One was the world-famous sword, and the other was a very high-grade sword manual. And this time, because they invited other people, there were a few more rewards. One of them was the ancient demonic path's secret treasure, the damaged heavenly demon creation flag. You should know what the good fortune heavenly devil flag means to us demonic cultivators. Those swordsmen's actions are simply a slap to the face of our demonic cultivators. If our demonic cultivators were to swallow this insult, that would be the biggest joke in the world. So this time, we demonic path people, whether it's the bright devil or the hidden devil lineage, have decided to put aside our prejudices and join forces to do something big. When Chushio heard this, he raised his eyebrows. If that was the case, then the one who took the initiative to cause trouble this time was really not the demonic path. Chushio knew about the reputation of the heavenly demon creation flag. This thing actually had nothing to do with the Kunlun devil cult. It was the symbol of the entire demonic path. According to legend, after the great calamity of ancient times, the Taoist and Buddhist lineages had actually left behind a very comprehensive inheritance. However, the demonic path was relatively loose, and the entire thing was fragmented. Later, someone found the ancient demonic path's ancestral land in the ruins. From there, they found many powerful demonic path cultivation methods. Only then did the demonic path recover its former glory. The heavenly demon creation flag was found in the ancient demonic path's ancestral land. It was the symbol of the ancient demonic path's ancestral land. A large flag was a formation, and cultivating demonic techniques under the flag would yield twice the results with half the effort. Moreover, in the era after the Great Calamity, the demonic path's inheritance was almost severed. The heavenly demon creation flag was the symbol of the orthodox demonic path. Countless demonic path sects had obtained it before. Almost all the demonic path sects who had once held on to the heavenly demon creation flag claimed that they were the orthodox demonic path. However, none of the sects had kept the flag for too long. So in general, the heavenly demon creation flag's status was similar to the dynasty's imperial jade seal. Although it did not have much use, its symbolic meaning was great. Later on, the heavenly demon creation flag naturally fell into the hands of the Kunlun devil cult. The Kunlun devil cult was also the sect that had held on to the heavenly demon creation flag for the longest time. However, as the Kunlun devil cult was destroyed, the heavenly demon creation flag was lost. Now the people of Jianghu knew that the flag had fallen into the hands of the 5 great sword sects. In truth, even if the flag fell into the hands of the other demonic path sects, they would only keep a low profile and hide it. They would not take it out to claim that they were the orthodox demonic path. Doing so would simply be courting death. Without the Kunlun devil cult's strength, it was best not to get involved with the Kunlun devil cult's matters. Otherwise, they would die a terrible death. Even so, the heavenly demon creation flag represented the orthodox demonic path in the past. It was the symbol of the demonic path. Now, however, it was treated as an item, a reward. It was simply a humiliation to the demonic path. Chushio frowned. What are the 5 great sword sects trying to do by provoking the demonic path? My Devil Dao lineage did not provoke them. They should know the consequences of doing so. My Devil Dao will definitely not let this matter rest. Their World Sword Sect conference shouldn't be held so peacefully. A cold light flashed in Mei Qinglian's eyes. What are we doing? Of course, we are preparing to establish our might. We want to see who is qualified to be the head of the 5 great sword sects. Among the 5 great sword sects, Sword King City and Forgetful Sword Hut were the strongest on the surface. Windcloud Sword Tomb had the deepest foundation. No one knew how strong Windcloud Sword Tomb was. Only Hidden Sword Villa and Yunu Palace were slightly weaker. They were not qualified to fight for the position of the head of the 5 great sword sects. The other 3 sects all wanted the position. Under normal circumstances, they would fight each other. However, that would only waste their own strength and make others laugh at them. Even if someone won in the end, the loss would be the entire 5 great sword sects' strength. The 5 great sword sects said that they were united. Although it was just words, infighting rarely happened. Since there was no infighting, they could only choose another opponent to establish their might. The 5 great sword sects did not dare to think about the Taoist and Buddhist lineages. Since it was like this, the demonic path that had completely weakened and collapsed was a good choice. The 5 great sword sects are not afraid of us causing trouble. They are afraid that we will not cause trouble. Only then can they show their strength and see which sect is qualified to be the head of the 5 great sword sects. In the past, when the Kunlun devil cult was still around, our demonic path suppressed the world. Demonic flames overflowed the sky. How awe-inspiring was that? At that time, let alone provoking us, these righteous sects could only shout the slogan of exterminating demons and defending the Tao carefully in private. How could they be as sullen as they are now? This is an overt plot. If we don't go, the demonic path's reputation will fall, and we will be trampled underfoot again. If we go, it will be exactly what the 5 great sword sects want. Anyway, our demonic path will suffer. Chushio spread his hands and said, in the end, our demonic path also chose to go, didn't it? Mei Qinglian snorted coldly and said, the Kunlun devil cult is gone, but the other demonic path sects are still there. When it comes to our demonic path, how can we retreat? Don't the 5 great sword sects want to see the strength of our demonic path? Then this time, we will let them see just how much strength our Devil Dao has left. Without the Kunlun devil cult, once our bright demon and hidden demon join forces, even if we are not as good as the Taoist and Buddhist lineages, ordinary people will not be able to humiliate us. Chushio asked doubtfully, by the way, what are bright demon and hidden demon? Mei Qinglian pointed at Chushio and then pointed at herself and said, you and I belong to the hidden demon lineage. The mark of the Kunlun devil cult on us is too strong. We belong to the kind of people that the righteous path sects must kill. We have to hide in the dark, so we are called hidden demon. The people of the phaseless demon sect also belong to the hidden demon lineage. As for the bright demon lineage, they are sects like the Northern Plains Evil Pole sect and the Miaojiang moon worshipping cult. When the Kunlun devil cult was destroyed, they had nothing to do with the Kunlun devil cult, so they could walk in the Jianghu above board and not be chased by the righteous path sections. Previously, the hidden demon lineage had a lot of complaints about the bright demon lineage, thinking that they had betrayed the demonic path, so the 2 sides could be said to be incompatible like fire and water. But now, because the 5 sword sects were provoking the entire demonic path, the 2 lineages of demonic path temporarily put down their prejudice and prepared to join forces this time. I'm the only one left of my shadow demon sect, but as you can see, I can't leave Guangzhou, so you will represent my shadow demon sect to participate in this demonic path conference. When the time comes, as the representative of my shadow demon sect, no matter how much effort you put in, you will get a share of the profits after the conference. It can also increase your prestige in the demonic path. Anyway, this is a good job. Chu Xiu nodded and asked, "When is the World Sword Sect Conference? Where is it?" Mei Qinglian said, "2 months later, West Chu's Floating Jade Mountain. But you have to go to the Bone Tree Villa next to Floating Jade Mountain in a month to participate in the Demonic Path Conference." At this time, Chu Xiu's expression did not change, but his heart was in turmoil. He finally remembered what had happened. In the original plot, this was not called the World Sword Sect Conference, but the famous Righteous Path and Demonic Path Conference on Floating Jade Mountain. Chapter 372. Previously, when Mei Qinglian mentioned the World Sword Sect Conference, Chu Xiu was still a little doubtful. Although he had heard of the World Sword Sect Conference in the original plot, it shouldn't have been so big. Only now did Chu Xiu realize that in the original plot, it wasn't called the World Sword Sect Conference, but the Righteous and Demonic Battles on Floating Jade Mountain. Chu Xiu had also guessed the reason. It was probably because the 5 major sword sects had caused too big of a commotion, so big that it implicated both the righteous and demonic sections. Both sides fought fiercely on Floating Jade Mountain, ultimately turning the World Sword Sect Conference into a war between the righteous and demonic sections. Moreover, this matter affected the entire pugilistic world. It could be said that it was the biggest conflict between the righteous and demonic sects since the destruction of the Kunlun devil cult. Since that was the case, this matter wasn't like what Mei Qinglian had said, where he only needed to represent the Yin demon sect to go through the motions, and he would be able to get all sorts of benefits. Instead, there was a huge risk involved. Although that was the case, Chu Xiu didn't want to reject it. The reason was simple. While there were risks, there were also huge benefits in the war between the righteous and demonic sects. Fighting in the pugilistic world would always improve more than training in seclusion. Chu Xiu also realized that he was actually a militant. Although he would sometimes use some schemes, to Chu Xiu, as long as it could be solved with fists and knives, he was actually too lazy to use his brain. Fortune came from danger. This was actually the most commonly used truth in the pugilistic world. Unless it was those who were blessed with great luck, sitting at home, divine skills would come from the heavens. The remaining 99% of the people in the pugilistic world wanted to become stronger, but they still had to rely on themselves to fight. Chu Xiu looked at Mei Qinglian and said, "How should I go to the World Sword Sect Conference? I'm the Guanxi penal officer after all. It seems a little troublesome to leave my fief without permission." Mei Qinglian stood up and said, "You don't have to worry about this. Let me handle it." This time, the 5 great sword sects wanted to be in the limelight. They put on a grand show and sent out quite a number of posts. Naturally, one of them was from the Guanzhong torture room. At that time, "I will let you represent the Guanzhong torture room to attend the World Sword Sect Conference. When the Bone Tree Villa's Devil Dao Alliance meeting begins, you should go and find that kid from the Phaseless Demon Sect, Lu Jin. He will definitely be there this time. The Phaseless Demon Sect is one of the stronger ones in my hidden devil lineage. That brat Lu Jin also owes me a favor. I have already informed him. This time he will tell you what to do." Chu Xiu nodded in understanding. With Mei Qinglian's control over Guanxiu, it was normal for her to be able to do this. In the next few days, Chu Xiu spent most of his time cultivating in the torture hall branch. As for sending Chu Xiu to represent the Guanzhong torture room to attend the World Sword Sect Conference, Guanxiu quickly gave the order. Most of the warriors in the Guanzhong torture room were somewhat dissatisfied with Chu Xiu participating in the World Sword Sect Conference as a representative. They felt that Guanxiu was too biased towards Chu Xiu. It was fine to send Chu Xiu to participate in the previous God Weapon Conference, but that was only an arena for the younger generation. There was indeed no one in the younger generation of the Guanzhong torture room who was stronger than Chu Xiu. But the World Sword Sect Conference this time included all the heroes of the large sects in the Jianghu. As a spectator, he represented the power of the sect behind him. He would definitely be in the limelight. What ability did Chu Xiu have to represent the entire Guanzhong torture hall? In terms of seniority, the other 3 disciplinary officers were more senior than Chu Xiu. In terms of strength, which of the leaders of the punishment hall were not stronger than Chu Xiu? In the end, this person had to be Chu Xiu. Among the other disciplinary officers, Xiao Yi and Chu Simo did not say anything. Only Im Batong objected the most. He even specially wrote a few letters to Guan Siyu, asking her to carefully consider this matter. However, he was ignored by Guan Siyu in the end. This made Im Batong feel helpless. After receiving the notice, Chu Xiu made some arrangements for the Guanxi area before heading to West Chu. Actually, there were no arrangements. Chu Xiu could be said to be the strongest and most murderous of all the disciplinary officers that had controlled the Guanxi area over the years. Although Chu Xiu's way of doing things was criticized by the martial arts forces in the Guanxi area, as long as Chu Xiu did not die, the martial arts forces in the Guanxi area would not dare to provoke Chu Xiu's dignity. The two largest clans in the Guanxi area had been completely destroyed by Chu Xiu in one day. The bloodstains on the ground of the Wei and Zhang families' ancestral lands had not been cleaned yet. Who would dare jump out and seek death? Therefore, Chu Xiu was very assured in the Guanxi area. Chu Xiu had never been to the land of West Chu before, but among the three kingdoms, West Chu was the most special. Among the dynasties in the world, as long as there was a split, there would be one land of West Chu. Although it might not be called West Chu, this also proved that the land of West Chu was the most unstable and difficult to unify. The reason was very simple. The land of West Chu had the feeling of a barren land with undeveloped forests everywhere. There were even some fierce beasts that had survived since ancient times. 80% of the West Chu area was not suitable for humans to live in. Only a few powerful and confident large sects would establish a sect in this kind of place. They wanted peace and quiet, as well as the rich cultivation resources there. Because there were few people, the power of the West Chu imperial court was not large, but the martial arts were flourishing. Although it could not compare to the Eastern Qi, it was a bit stronger than the Northern Yan. The martial arts were flourishing while the imperial court was weak. Over the years, the West Chu imperial court rarely participated in the struggle between the three countries. Most of the time, when the Eastern Qi was strong, they would ally with the Northern Yan to suppress the Eastern Qi. But when the Eastern Qi suffered a loss, West Chu would immediately retreat, as if they did not have any initiative. In reality, it was not that West Chu did not want to fight, but it was impossible for West Chu to attack the Central Plains with their strength. Being able to maintain the current situation was not an easy matter for West Chu. The official road to West Chu was a little narrow. Along the way, Chu Xiu saw many warriors with swords in a hurry. It was obvious that they were preparing to participate in the World Sword Sect Conference. The World Sword Sect Conference was only held once every 100 years. Not only would the young generation of swordsmen compete with each other, there would also be grandmaster-level swordsmen sparring with each other. There would also be sword grandmasters from various large sects giving public lectures. It could be said that as long as the rogue warriors went, they would definitely not be at a disadvantage. And this time, the World Sword Sect Conference had opened its conditions to the public. All the people of the pugilistic world could come and watch the ceremony. This attracted even more warriors to come and join in the fun. Chu Xiu went straight to the Qingzhou prefecture, which was not far from Floating Jade Mountain. Mei Qinglian had already informed Mr. Liu of the Phaseless Demon Sect. If Mr. Liu arrived, he would naturally come and inform him. Holding the invitation for the World Sword Sect Conference, Chu Xiu went straight to the Sword Deviate Pavilion of the Qingzhou prefecture. The Sword Separation Pavilion could be considered as a combination of a restaurant and an inn. However, one could tell from its name that it would only serve the people of Jianghu. During the period of the World Sword Sect competition, the Sword Separation Pavilion would only serve sword cultivators. The other non-sword cultivators would only be qualified to enter if they had the invitation to the World Sword Sect competition. As for the other rogue cultivators, they could only be rejected. After all, although the Sword Separation Pavilion was big, it had limited space. Although this would attract some criticism, no one dared to cause trouble. This was because the Sword Deviate Pavilion was the business of the Forgotten Sword Hut. Among the 5 major sword sects, the Forgotten Sword Hut's strength was definitely at the forefront. The warriors of the Forgotten Sword Hut cultivated the way of the sword. They comprehended sword intent, understood the principles of the sword, and practiced sword techniques. They progressed step by step, and had an incomparably solid foundation. Therefore, from the day the Forgotten Sword Hut was established, it had always been one of the 5 major sword sections. In history, it was either the head of the 5 major sword sects or it was in the middle. In any case, it had never been like the Yu Palace. When it was glorious, it was incomparably powerful, but when it declined, it was beyond recognition. The strength of the Forgotten Sword Hut had always been very stable. Moreover, in this World Sword Sect Conference, the Forgotten Sword Hut was also the existence with the most ability to become the head of the 5 major sword sections. In front of the Sword Deviate Pavilion, 2 disciples of the Forgotten Sword Hut, dressed in white and holding swords, cupped their hands towards Chu Xiu and said, "Friend, if you are not a sword cultivator, please show the invitation of the World Sword Sect to enter the Sword Deviate Pavilion." The attitude of these 2 warriors from the Forgotten Sword Hut could be considered to be very polite. After all, during the World Sword Sect Conference, countless experts came and went. The 5 major sword sects did not want to cause trouble, so the disciples they sent out to receive him were smooth and slick people. They would not cause any misunderstandings because of their attitude. Chu Xiu handed over the invitation. One of the disciples of the Forgotten Sword Hut looked at it, and immediately cupped his hands. "So it is the official Chu of the Guanzhong torture room. Please enter." As he spoke, the disciple of the Forgotten Sword Hut immediately said in a loud voice, "The representative of the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Xiu, official Chu, has arrived." As he spoke, a disciple of the Forgotten Sword Hut immediately walked out, and led Chu Xiu into the Sword Deviate Pavilion. This was not because the disciple of the Forgotten Sword Hut had a good attitude and good service. It was because they had no other choice. During this time, many warriors had come to the Sword Deviate Pavilion. Some had enmity between them, some had enmity between sects, and there were even countless who did not like each other. As a warrior, it was almost impossible to find someone with a good temper. Fighting was a common thing. Over the past few days, countless warriors had fought many times over a seat. Thus, the warriors of the Forgotten Sword Hut had learned their lesson. As long as someone came with an invitation, the people of the Forgotten Sword Hut would arrange a seat for them. This was to prevent them from fighting over a seat. At this time, there were also many warriors in the Sword Deviate Pavilion looking at Chu Xiu. Other than the warriors of Eastern Qi, the others only glanced at Chu Xiu before looking away. Although Chu Xiu was from the Northern Yan, he could only be considered a minor figure in the Northern Yan. He had never been to West Chu before, so the people of these 2 places had only heard rumors about Chu Xiu. On the other hand, in Eastern Qi, Chu Xiu's reputation was great. Just as the disciples of the Forgotten Sword Hut had arranged a seat for Chu Xiu, a middle-aged warrior sitting across from Chu Xiu slammed the table and snorted coldly. Chapter 373. Some people had friends all over the world, such as young Marquis Wen Lu Fengxian. Others had enemies all over the world. They were referring to Chu Xiu. The middle-aged martial artist who had slammed the table was at the unity of heaven and man realm. On his back were 2 long swords, one red and one blue. He showed undisguised malice to Chu Xiu, but Chu Xiu only felt that he looked familiar. He couldn't remember who he was. The Forgetful Sword Hut disciple who had brought Chu Xiu in slapped his head helplessly. This kind of thing had happened more than once or twice in the past few days. Each time, the Forgetful Sword Hut had to come and mediate. As disciples of the Forgetful Sword Hut, they were already annoyed. Just as the Forgotten Sword Hut disciple was about to speak, Chu Xiu said indifferently, "You have a grudge against me? But there are many people who want to cause trouble for me in this world. If you want to cause trouble for me, then tell me your name first. Otherwise, I won't recognize who you are." When Chu Xiu said this, everyone present was stunned. They had seen arrogant people, but they had never seen someone as arrogant as this. Just how many people had Chu Xiu offended that he couldn't even remember who his enemies were? The middle-aged man's expression was also frighteningly gloomy. In reality, he didn't want to cause trouble for Chu Xiu this time. This was the territory of the Forgotten Sword Hut. He had to give the Forgotten Sword Hut face. Also, before he came, his master had instructed that he had to keep a low profile during this World Sword Sect conference. Otherwise, he would have started making things difficult the moment Chu Xiu entered. In the end, the Forgotten Sword Hut disciple had unintentionally brought Chu Xiu to his side. This way he could no longer ignore him. That was why he slammed the table and snorted. However, he had never expected that Chu Xiu didn't even know who he was. The middle-aged martial artist gritted his teeth and said coldly, "Azure Water Sword Sect, Do Guangchen. Chu Xiu, are you purposely humiliating my Azure Water Sword Sect? You crippled my junior. I will settle this debt with you sooner or later." Chu Xiu slapped his head. Only now did he remember who this person was. After all, Do Guangchen had once brought people to surround him on Shangmeng Mountain. However, Chu Xiu hadn't met Do Guangchen face to face. He had only seen him a few times from afar, so he couldn't remember. Leisurely sitting down, Chu Xiu indifferently said, "Shinbai is a character. Although he was defeated by me, he is stronger than you. If it was Shinbai, if he didn't want to kill me, then he wouldn't be blowing his beard and glaring at me, making such a useless gesture. On the other hand, if Shinbai wanted to kill me, he wouldn't care whether or not this was the territory of the Forgetting Sword Hut. He would come directly with his sword." Now that Shinbai has been crippled by me, your Azure Water Sword Sect doesn't even have a worthy disciple. This is truly lamentable. You are the eldest Shixiang, yet you don't even have Shinbai's boldness. Your master should be very disappointed with you, right? Do Guangchen indeed didn't want to make a move. Azure Water Sword Sect was currently at a low point, and he knew that his master was treating Shinbai. His junior still had a chance of survival. Therefore, when he came to participate in the World Sword Sect conference, Lu Gongyuan had already told him to endure and keep a low profile. This time, Azure Water Sword Sect was just a formality. Needless to say, Chu Xiu's mouth was vicious. With just a few words, Do Guangchen was infuriated. In fact, what truly provoked him was when Chu Xiu said that he was inferior to Shinbai and made Lu Gongyuan disappointed. The entire Azure Water Sword Sect knew that Lu Gongyuan used all of Azure Water Sword Sect's resources to nurture Shinbai. This was something that Lu Gongyuan tacitly agreed to as a senior, and didn't have any jealousy or dissatisfaction. He could accept these things, but he couldn't allow outsiders to say it. The two long swords on Do Guangchen's back were unsheathed at the same time. The chilling ice sword chi and the scarlet flame sword chi fused together. Fire and water were incompatible, but for Do Guangchen, they complemented each other, and their prowess was extraordinary. Back when Chu Xiu was at the physical invulnerability realm, he could only dodge like a mouse when facing Do Guangchen, who was at the unity of heaven and man realm. Now that he was facing the so-called unity of heaven and man realm, Chu Xiu's mental state had a clear change. The so-called unity of heaven and man was nothing more than this. It wasn't like he hadn't killed before. Chu Xiu sat still and formed the Great Vajra will seal. Because he cultivated the Great Vajra divine powers, when Chu Xiu executed Buddhist martial arts, his Dipper Chi actually had a trace of Buddha's golden radiance. It was as though he truly had the might of a Vajra. There was a loud bang, and Do Guangchen's sword light was torn apart. Chu Xiu's figure remained unmoved, but Do Guangchen took 3 steps back, and the chair under his feet was directly shattered. The commotion from their side was too big, and everyone present looked towards Do Guangchen and Chu Xiu. All of their faces revealed a surprised expression. It might not be a new thing for a young elite on the Longhu rankings to defeat a senior martial artist, but Do Guangchen was still a well-known figure. He was the mainstay of the Azure Water Sword Sect, and Lu Gongyuan's first disciple. Now that he was so easily defeated by Chu Xiu, it seemed like he was a little too useless. In fact, Do Guangchen was accepted as a disciple by Lu Gongyuan in the past, and he was only second to Lu Gongyuan in the Azure Water Sword Sect. Do Guangchen wasn't mediocre, but Chu Xiu was a little too strong. After cultivating the Great Vajra divine powers, Chu Xiu could be considered to have made up for his last shortcoming. In the eyes of martial artists of the same rank, the current Chu Xiu was simply invulnerable. With a strong and profound inner force, coupled with the spiritual force that wasn't considered strong, but definitely wasn't weak either, Finally, after cultivating the great Vajra divine powers, Chu Xiu was almost invincible within the five Chi's origin realm. Even among the martial artists at the unity of heaven and man realm, Chu Xiu was confident that he could defeat most of them. Just as Dou Guangqin flew into a rage out of humiliation and wanted to continue attacking, and when Chu Xiu revealed his killing intent, a longsword that was completely condensed by the power of ice suddenly descended and stood upright in front of Chu Xiu and Dou Guangqin. This longsword was completely condensed by the water vapor in the air. It could be said that it was a sword formed by the power of heaven and earth. It was needless to say what kind of status one had to have to achieve this. A figure walked down from upstairs and looked at the scene below. In a cold voice he said, "Have you all fought enough? If you want to fight, wait until the World Sword Sect Conference begins. My sword separation pavilion is not a place for you to settle your personal grudges." The martial artist who walked down had a monstrous aura around him. He was impressively a martial arts grandmaster. Furthermore, his appearance was also very strange. He was in his 40s and had slanted eyebrows. His face was slouched, and he had a naturally bitter look. It was hard for people to not be able to hold back their laughter when they saw him. However, although this person in front of them looked a little funny, no one dared to laugh in front of him. This person's temper was notoriously bad. He was the master of the Sitting Sword Hut South Sword Peak, painstaking sword Yin Bujue. He could be said to be a strange freak. The disciples of the Sitting Sword Hut had a calm temperament, and had always had a good reputation in the martial world. However, Yin Bujue was the exact opposite. He could not get along with anyone, and his temper was also abnormally violent. In his early years he had offended many people. If he had not been taken in by the Sitting Sword Hut, Yin Bujue would most likely have been beaten to death. However, even after joining the Sitting Sword Hut, Yin Bujue's temper did not change. He was still overbearing and strong. When the Sitting Sword Hut dealt with outsiders, it was inevitable that they would use a carrot and a stick. This Yin Bujue was that big stick. Chu Xiu spread out his hands and said, "Senior Yin, everyone here is watching. I did not make the first move. Of course, if some people are not convinced and want to go out and fight again, I, Chu Xiu, will accompany them to the end." At the side, Dou Guangqin was so angry that his face turned red. However, with Yin Bujue in front of him, in addition to the power of Chu Xiu's great Vajra will seal just now, he had already sensed it. If he forcefully fought, he would not gain any advantage. Thinking of his master's instructions, Dou Guangqin could only suppress the anger in his heart and directly leave. Seeing this scene, everyone present looked at each other in dismay. The Azure Water Sword sect had actually declined to such a state. Compared to Chu Xiu, Dou Guangqin was a senior in the pugilistic world, and was an existence that was only inferior to Lu Gongyuan in the Azure Water Sword sect. But in the end, in the hands of Chu Xiu, Dou Guangqin could only swallow his anger and retreat. The Azure Water Sword sect's reputation was completely lost. Chu Xiu squinted his eyes and looked at Dou Guangqin. He actually hoped that Dou Guangqin would disregard everything and make a move on him. That way, he would have the opportunity to kill Dou Guangqin openly. This wasn't because Chu Xiu had a murderous nature, but ever since he crippled Shen Bai, he had already formed an irreconcilable grudge with the Azure Water Sword sect. It could also be said that this was the only irreconcilable grudge that Chu Xiu had formed. Chu Xiu killed 7th uncle and defeated Xiahou Wujiang multiple times. He only offended Xiahou Zhen, the patriarch's bloodline, and not the entire Xiahou clan. And when Chu Xiu killed Ming Chen, he only offended Ming Chen's master's bloodline. It couldn't even be considered as the entire Vajra institution. But when Chu Xiu crippled Shen Bai, he crippled the future hope of the entire Azure Water Sword sect. This was definitely an irreconcilable grudge. Therefore, when facing an Azure Water Sword sect disciple, Chu Xiu didn't need to show mercy. He didn't need to think about the consequences. One word: kill. Yin Bujue glanced at Chu Xiu and spoke indifferently. Dragon Tiger ranking 6th rank Chu Xiu. I have heard of you. Among the top 10 elites of the Dragon Tiger rankings, you appear the most frequently and your ability to cause trouble isn't bad. But in my Forgotten Sword Hut's territory, if you still don't restrain yourself, then don't blame me for not giving your Guanzhong torture room any face. Chu Xiu spoke indifferently. Senior Yan, you are wronging me. I, Chu Xiu, never take the initiative to cause trouble. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. But every time trouble finds me, I can only choose to retaliate. Taking a deep look at Chu Xiu, Yan Buha spoke. Let's hope so. Finishing his statement, Yan Buha immediately turned and left. Chu Xiu continued to sit here and leisurely ate his meal. But this time no one cast their eyes on Chu Xiu. This person wasn't someone to be trifled with. Chapter 374. Late at night, in the guest room of the Sword Separation Pavilion, a knocking sound came from outside Chu Xiu's door. Chu Xiu opened the door. An unfamiliar middle-aged man in white stood there and said softly, "It's me." Hearing this voice, Chu Xiu immediately realized that this person was Mr. Lu. Chu Xiu said in surprise, "This is the Sword Separation Pavilion, the territory of the Forgetful Sword Hut. Mr. Lu, aren't you afraid of something happening by appearing here so openly?" Mr. Lu closed the door and chuckled. He pointed at his face and said, "If I didn't even have this little ability, my phaseless demon sect would have been exterminated countless times already. Don't worry, even if Yan Bubu stood in front of me, he wouldn't be able to see any flaws. My current identity is a standard righteous person, a wandering cultivator from Shangyang of Eastern Qi, Pine Wave Sword Su Songtao." Chu Xiu said with some curiosity, "Then what about the real Su Songtao?" Mr. Lu casually waved his hand and said, "Of course he's dead. He's dead to the point where not even dregs are left." Chu Xiu nodded and didn't say anything. The methods of the demonic path had always been this ruthless. He, Chu Xiu, who was pretending to be a descendant of the demonic path, naturally wouldn't be any better. Although Mr. Lu's attitude towards him was very polite and amiable, in reality, as an expert of the phaseless demon sect, Mr. Lu was definitely the kind of demonic path villain who killed without blinking an eye. Waving his hand, Mr. Lu looked at Chu Xiu with a strange gaze and said, "I didn't expect that you actually have a relationship with the Holy Maiden. She already told me before that you will be participating in the Demonic Path's Alliance meeting on behalf of the Shadow Demon Sect. Such a good thing has fallen onto your head. Don't tell me you've joined the Shadow Demon Sect?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Of course not. It's just that there's no one in the Shadow Demon Sect at the moment, and the Holy Maiden is busy, so she asked me to make this trip." "Right, Mr. Lu. Is the Holy Maiden very strong in the Shadow Demon Sect? Is his identity very special?" Mr. Lu said, "Martial masters are naturally very powerful. Moreover, it's not that the Saintess' identity is special, but the Een demon ancestor's identity is special. In the past, among the sects attached to the Kunlun Devil cult, the Een demon sect's relationship with the Kunlun Devil cult is one of the closest. Even the Een demon sect's sect master and saintess can become the devil envoys of the Kunlun Devil cult. Their status is even higher than my phaseless demon sect. However, in recent years, the Een demon sect had been more or less annihilated by the righteous sections. Moreover, because of a traitor, the Een demon sect had almost been destroyed. Now only the saintess was left. However, even if the Holy Maiden was the only one left, as long as the inheritance of the Een demon sect existed, her status would still be there. The saintess once helped me in the past, so I definitely won't let you suffer a loss during this Demonic Path Alliance meeting. Pack up. You can follow me to the Bonewood Villa now. However, you have to conceal your identity and change it to a Demonic Path's identity. In recent years, the Demonic Path has become somewhat impure. There might be some traitors mixed in. The Een demon sect was almost destroyed because of a traitor. Your identity in the Jianghu is not bad. No one will suspect that the Guanzhong torture room's torture officer is a descendant of the Kunlun Devil cult. Therefore, you have to conceal your identity well to avoid being recognized and causing unnecessary trouble. Chu Xiu nodded. He knew this even without Mr. Lu saying it. These days, even the righteous path's people could not be trusted, let alone those evil and ruthless demonic paths people. Because of Mr. Lu's relationship with the phaseless demon sect, as long as Chu Xiu used his identity as the successor of the Kunlun Devil cult, Mr. Lu would not harm him. However, Other sects that did not have a close relationship with the Kunlun devil cult, or even the bright demon sect that had betrayed the Kunlun devil cult in the past, could do anything. Chu Xiu took out a mask with the Blue Dragon Society's symbol on it, and put it on. He changed into a hoarse and deep voice and said, "I am a newcomer of the demonic path, Lin Yi. Nice to meet you, Mr. Liu." A playful smile appeared on Mr. Liu's face as he said, "The Blue Dragon Society's black iron mask? This is a pretty good item. However, it's best if you don't use those more conspicuous martial arts. Otherwise, people will be able to deduce your identity." After leaving the Sword Separation Pavilion, Chu Xiu followed Mr. Liu to the Bone Tree Villa. The so-called Bone Tree Villa was actually a deserted villa. Its name was very strange, but its origin was even more terrifying. Legend has it that the master of the Bone Tree Villa was a righteous hero. In the end, because he cultivated a demonic path's secret technique, he went berserk. He had to use human blood and flesh to concoct pills in order to maintain his vitality. Therefore, this righteous hero used his reputation to invite many people of the Jianghu to the Bone Tree Villa as guests. In the end, none of those people of the Jianghu walked out of the Bone Tree Villa alive. Moreover, apart from using the flesh and blood of those who were killed to concoct pills, their bones were also used as materials to reinforce the entire Bone Tree Villa. This was also the origin of the so-called Bone Tree Villa. It was said that because the master of the Bone Tree Villa was exposed, he was killed by many righteous heroes. The Bone Tree Villa was also completely deserted. However, because there were too many people who died here, the flesh and blood of those who died unjustly were used to concoct pills, and their bones were used as materials. Therefore, every midnight, the Bone Tree Villa would be filled with the cries of wronged ghosts. It was very terrifying. When Chu Xiu followed Mr. Liu to the Bone Tree Villa, he discovered that this place was indeed a bit terrifying. The originally dilapidated villa seemed a bit gloomy and terrifying. The buildings of the Bone Tree Villa were also very strange. They were either pitch black in color, or a strange grayish-white color. Looking at them gave people a strange feeling. When they were approaching the Bone Tree Villa, Mr. Liu said to Chu Xiu in a deep voice, "Chu, you are a direct descendant of the Kunlun devil cult. However, you have not had any dealings with the current demonic path. The current relationship between demonic paths is more complicated than in the past. However, you don't need to care about this. All you need to know is that you are a direct descendant of the Kunlun devil cult, and your status is more respected than most people. You are the representative of the Yin demon sect, and the people standing behind you are also more powerful than most people. That is enough. The Bright Devil lineage is not on good terms with my Yinma lineage. This group of people betrayed the Holy Church in exchange for an ignoble existence. Although they have accumulated a lot of strength over the years, my Yinma lineage is not weak in the dark. To resist external forces, we must first stabilize the internal forces. This so-called demonic path alliance is actually a plot within the demonic path, before we can unite against the external forces." Chu Xiu nodded. He was very good at using the tiger's skin as a flag. Even without Mr. Liu's teaching, Chu Xiu understood this. As they walked into the Bone Tree Villa, two black-clothed martial artists with the 3-flower realm cultivation suddenly appeared and shouted, "Who are you?" Mr. Liu threw out 2 tokens. The 2 martial artists glanced at them and immediately handed them to Mr. Liu. They cupped their hands and said, "So you are the representatives of the Phaseless Demon Sect and the Yin Demon Sect. Please come in." Chu Xiu glanced at the 2 and asked, "Who are the guards?" Mr. Liu said indifferently, "They are from the 6th Demon Sect in Hainan. The 6th Demon Sect is considered to be neutral in the demonic path. Strictly speaking, it is the Bright Demon Sect. However, when my sacred sect was destroyed, the 6th Demon Sect did not choose to betray us, nor did they choose to escape. Those righteous sects did not touch them completely because the 6th Demon Sect was far away in Hainan, far away from the Central Plains. They did not have much of a presence. When the sacred sect was completely destroyed, they only received the news. Therefore, the 6th Demon Sect did not betray the sacred sect. We, the Hidden Demon Sect, naturally have no hostility towards them. The 6th Heavenly Demon Sect is presiding over this Devil Alliance meeting. Otherwise, if we from the bright devil lineage and the hidden devil lineage were to sit together, I'm afraid we would start fighting each other before we could even attack the 5 great sword sects." As he spoke, Mr. Lu had already stepped into the Bone Tree Villa with Chu Xiao. At this time, the originally dilapidated Bone Tree Villa had been cleaned up, but the inside was still gloomy and terrifying. In the hall of the Bone Tree Villa, cold and evil demonic chi filled the entire hall. The entire hall was clearly divided into 2 factions. On one side, there were more people from the Bright Demon sect, while on the other side, there were fewer people from the Hidden Demon sect. When they saw Mr. Lu bringing Chu Xiao in, everyone present turned to look at the 2 of them. Mr. Lu waved his hand and revealed his original appearance. Only then did many people from the Hidden Demon sect greet Mr. Lu. On the side of the Bright Demon lineage, a martial artist of the unity of heaven and man realm, who was dressed in a colorful robe with strange patterns, suddenly let out a strange laugh and said, "Lu Jin, I heard that your phaseless demon sect has already fought with the Hidden Sword Villa and suffered a loss. In the end, you still couldn't get the demon sword Eternal Yearning. Are you here for revenge? And who is that beside you? The Demon Dao Alliance is not a place that anyone can participate in. What is the meaning of you bringing a junior martial artist who is only at the 5 Chi's origin realm? Is he here to see the world?" This martial artist in the unity of heaven and man realm was dressed strangely, but his appearance was very handsome and bewitching. He was so handsome that people could not tell whether he was a man or a woman. Even his voice carried a gentle aura, giving people goosebumps after hearing it. Mr. Lu's face darkened and he said coldly, "Cho Xiangzi, mind your 5 poison sect's business. You have the nerve to ridicule my phaseless demon sect? In the past, your 5 poison sect coveted the sword insects of the Storm Sword Tomb. Did you forget that several of your elders were killed in a single strike? And this person beside me is not a junior martial artist. His name is Lin Yi, and he is the legitimate successor of the Kunlun Devil cult. This time, he is representing the Shadow Demon sect to participate in the Demon Dao Alliance. Is this identity not enough?" Hearing this, Cho Xiangzi's face revealed a faint smile and said, "He is representing the Holy Maiden of the Shadow Demon sect to participate in the Demon Dao Alliance? Since when did the Shadow Demon sect have a man? This kid can't be that woman's lover, right?" Chapter 375. There were plenty of people with foul mouths everywhere. Chu Xiao wouldn't be angered by a single sentence from the other party. Hearing that, Chu Xiao only transmitted his voice to Mr. Lu in an unusually calm manner. "Who is this?" Mr. Lu sneered. 5 poison sect's young master Shan-in Cho Xiangzi. He's already so old, not much younger than me. Yet he's still pretending to be a young master here. He's been relying on the symbiotic poison goo to maintain his appearance. In the past, he once pursued the Holy Maiden, but with her strength, how could she take a fancy to such trash? Now that the Holy Maiden is in existence at the martial grandmaster level, she's long left this guy behind. Hearing that, Chu Xiao nodded in understanding. He looked at Cho Xiangzi and said indifferently, "My relationship with the Holy Maiden doesn't need a thing that's neither a man nor a woman like you to worry about. I heard that you once pursued the Holy Maiden with a thick face? Please clarify whether you're male or female first." Chu Xiao's words were extremely vicious, directly stabbing Cho Xiangzi's handsome face. "Arrogant junior. You're courting death." Cho Xiangzi fiercely slammed the chair, his figure turning into a stream of light, directly rushing towards Chu Xiao. Before Chu Xiao's arrival, the Bright Demons and Inmo had already quarreled several times. However, they did not make a move, but the smell of gunpowder was already very strong. That was why Cho Xiangzi had directly opened his mouth to ridicule Mr. Lu when he first came in. Now that it had escalated to the level of fighting, it was very normal. At the very least, there was no reaction from the Bright Demon lineage and Inmo lineage. Mr. Lu snorted coldly and was about to make a move, but he was stopped by Chu Xiao. Among the martial artists present, there were martial grandmaster level experts, and most of the others were Unity of Heaven and Man Realm martial artists. Although there were also martial artists below Unity of Heaven and Man Realm, they were all junior martial artists responsible for serving tea and water. There really weren't any martial artists like Chu Xiu who came to represent the Yin demon sect to discuss the alliance meeting. Therefore, everyone wanted to see how good Chu Xiu was, and whether he had the qualifications to represent the Yin demon sect to participate in this demon alliance meeting. Therefore, everyone wanted to see how good Chu Xiu was, and whether he was qualified to represent the Yin demon sect to participate in this demon alliance meeting. Even if Chu Xiu planned on silently joining the Demon Path Alliance meeting as a spectator, he still had to show that he had the qualifications to be a spectator. Moreover, Chu Xiu didn't plan on just being a spectator. At that moment, Zhou Xiangzi had already arrived before Chu Xiu. However, in that instant, Zhou Xiangzi's figure instantly turned into a ball of rainbow-colored fog, enveloping Chu Xiu within it in an instant. The Five Poisons cult was born in the 10,000 mountains of the Miaojiang. Although it was not as famous as the moon-worshipping cult, it was also a big demonic sect, one of the 8 sects. On the surface, Five Poison sect was born in the Miaojiang's 100,000 mountains. Although it was not as famous as moon-worshipping sect, it was still a big demon sect, and was one of the 8 sections. On the surface, it looked like Zhou Xiangzi had unleashed a multicolored poisonous mist, but in reality, there were countless tiny poisonous insects within the poisonous mist, making it seem extremely terrifying. Being shrouded in the poisonous fog, Chu Xiu revealed a cold smile. Because he had to hide his identity, most of Chu Xiu's martial skills could not be used directly. Even his signature Sky Demon dance could only be hidden. Therefore, Chu Xiu's fighting strength was suppressed by at least half. Chu Xiu could feel Zhou Xiangzi's strength the moment he made a move. He was definitely not weak. Even if he could not compare to Mr. Liu, who was a half-step master, he was stronger than his 7th uncle. However, it was a pity that he encountered Chu Xiu. The glazed gold silk goo in Chu Xiu's body had a great restraining effect on poisons, not to mention this kind of poisonous insects. As soon as they got close to Chu Xiu, they were directly suppressed by the glazed gold silk goo's natural superior pressure. They fainted on the ground and were shattered by Chu Xiu's gang qi. Chu Xiu activated the devil qi of the 3 blades of Avicii, and combined it with the powerful killing intent of the heaven-extinguishing and earth-destroying oblivion-killing fist. He directly punched out and blasted Zhou Xiangzi, who was hidden in the poisonous fog, away. Zhou Xiangzi retreated several steps. His hands, which had blocked Chu Xiu's punch, could not help but tremble. He looked at Chu Xiu in horror. There was more than one person in Jianghu who knew the heaven-extinguishing and earth-destroying oblivion-killing fist. Chu Xiu was not worried that he would expose this martial skill. Moreover, he had integrated the unique devil qi of the 3 blades of Avicii into it. In the eyes of the outside world, as long as he did not use saber techniques, no one would associate Chu Xiu with his current identity. While Zhou Xiangzi was still in shock, Chu Xiu had already closed in and punched again. The killing intent shocked the scene, and a cold chill directly shot up to the sky. Everyone present looked at each other with strange eyes. Where did this rising star of the devil Dao named Lin Yi come from? His identity was not simple at all. This powerful killing intent and evil aura was something that ordinary warriors who cultivated step by step would not be able to achieve. How many people did this guy kill to achieve this level of cultivation? However, the crowd did not delve into it, especially the people from the Yin Ma clan. They were chased by the righteous sects almost every day. It was normal for them to change their identities. Even they did not trust themselves. One could imagine how many fake identities they had to create in order to prevent themselves from being chased by the righteous sections. Now it seemed that Lin Yi was the same. He should be a well-known figure in Jianghu. At this moment, when Zhou Xiangzi saw that Chu Xiu, a junior warrior who was inferior to him, actually dared to pursue him relentlessly, his devilishly handsome face became distorted. He stretched out one hand, and the 5-colored poisonous gas continuously swirled around his fingers. As his hands danced, the 5-colored threads that filled the sky instantly turned into an inescapable net under the support of his inner force, enveloping Chu Xiu. Each of the 5 poison sects' 5 poison gang qi had the power to poison warriors of the same level to death. The most terrifying thing was that the 5 kinds of poisonous gas could be arranged at will, and their attributes were also different. It could be said that the 5 poison gang qi cultivated by every warrior of the 5 poison sect was different. The 5 poison silk hand that Qiu Xiangzi displayed was his unique secret technique. Apart from using his own gang qi to resist it, there was almost no way to break it. As long as one came into contact with a trace of it, the poison would immediately enter the heart meridian. Chu Xiu formed a seal with his hands, and a strange gang qi enveloped his body. Half of it was Buddhist light, and the other half was an incomparably evil and monstrous demonic aura. The Buddhist light and demonic aura combined, forming an evil phantom behind Chu Xiu. It was clearly dignified, but the demonic flames were monstrous. Great Vajra divine powers, Mara Vajra form. Chu Xiu had already started cultivating the Great Vajra divine powers while he was recuperating. Now Chu Xiu's Great Vajra divine powers was only at the beginner level. Naturally, he was unable to condense his own Dharma form. However, Chu Xiu chose a few Dharma forms that were more suitable for him to imitate and cultivate. Among those who cultivated the Great Vajra divine powers, there were Buddhist monks, but there were also Buddhist scum. The Buddhist warrior who cultivated the Mara Vajra form was one of them. He had resentment in his heart, which resulted in him being unable to condense his own Dharma form. Therefore, he directly turned from Buddhism to the demonic. He did not expect that he would successfully cultivate the Mara Vajra form by chance. Chu Xiu also cultivated both Buddhism and demonic. Therefore, after obtaining the Mara Vajra form, he quickly succeeded in cultivating it without any hesitation. As soon as the Mara Vajra form appeared, Chu Xiu stepped forward, allowing the inescapable net condensed by the 5 poison silk hand to fall on his body. However, they were all strangled by the Buddhist light and demonic aura. As the palm fell, the demonic flames were monstrous, and the Buddhist light was scorching. The two forces mixed together and fell on Qiu Xiangzi's head. The power was incomparably powerful, immediately causing everyone in the lobby to look sideways. The power of Chu Xiu's palm was enough to be shocking among the warriors at the unity of heaven and man realm. Although this man was at the 5 qis collecting in the origin realm, his strength was already comparable to the unity of heaven and man realm. At least, there were not many people present who were confident that they could defeat Chu Xiu. The way Mr. Lu looked at Chu Xiu was also very strange. Only a short period of time had passed, and Chu Xiu had already grown to such a realm. Could it be that the heavens were really blessing the sacred sect, and that the younger generation had also produced such an astonishing and supreme powerhouse? The Buddhist lineage had wisdom king Zongxian, the Dao lineage had little celestial master Zhang Qingzhen, and the sword lineage also had chief sword Feng Qi Xiao. Now the devil Dao lineage had produced Chu Xiu, although he could only hide his identity now. If there were no problems with Chu Xiu's future development, Mr. Lu believed that Chu Xiu would definitely grow to be an existence that could rival the 3 of them. At this moment in the arena, facing Chu Xiu's Buddhist light mixed with demonic aura, Qiu Xiangzi threw out a strange ice silkworm from his sleeve. The violent 5 poison gang qi was injected into the ice silkworm, and in an instant, the ice silkworm expanded by a size. It spat out endless cold air, which turned into countless ice crystals in front of Qiu Xiangzi. This was the mystical ice goo that Qiu Xiangzi had refined in the far north wastelands. For this, he had even fought with the people of the far north fluttering snow city. The mystical ice goo could transform any power into the power of mystical ice. Once the mystical ice goo entered one's body, it would immediately freeze the person's meridians and true qi. It was extremely terrifying, but now it could only be used for defense. However, Chu Xiu's Mara Vajra form was powerful and heavy. The Great Vajra divine strength was supported by the power of the Dharma form, and it was definitely a top-notch body tempering technique. As the palm fell, cracks appeared on the large area of ice crystals. The Buddhist light and demonic aura exploded, and in an instant, all the ice crystals shattered. The mystical ice goo also exploded. Qiu Xiangzi roared angrily. That was the mystical ice goo that he had spent several years to refine. However, before Qiu Xiangzi could react, Chu Xiu had already formed a seal with both hands, and the Mara Vajra form behind him was replaced by the dignified Dharma guardian Wisdom King. As the fist fell, the Buddhist light instantly shone brightly, suppressing evil and slaying demons. Hell suppressing wisdom king form. Amidst the explosion of the Buddhist light, Cho Xiangzi was blasted back several steps, and a stream of blood flowed from his mouth. What was even more bizarre was that his face was constantly twisting, as if there were countless goo worms swimming under his skin. In an instant, his appearance actually aged by several decades, from a young man in his 20s to an old man in his 60s or 70s. He looked even older than Mr. Lu. Pointing at Chu Xiao, Cho Xiangzi roared, "Buddhist technique. He's a spy sent by the Buddhist sects." Chapter 376. Cho Xiangzi used his wide sleeves to cover his face. He looked at Chu Xiao with a gaze filled with venomous hatred. He didn't hate Chu Xiao for defeating him, but he hated Chu Xiao for using a Buddhist technique to shake up the poisonous insects in his body, making it impossible for him to maintain his youthful appearance. Cho Xiangzi valued his face immensely. Destroying his face was more painful than killing him. Chu Xiao said indifferently, "Those who practice Buddhist techniques are spies of Buddhism. If I practice poison techniques, would I still be a member of your 5 poison sect?" Mr. Lu also sneered and said, "I've also practiced Taoism's Tai Chi Yin-Yang sword. Does that mean I'm also a member of Taoism? You bright demons can walk the Jianghu without worry. If we hidden demons aren't careful, I'm afraid we'd have been eliminated by those righteous Tao long ago." A hint of anger appeared in Cho Xiangzi's eyes. He wanted to say something, but at this moment, a monk in black who had been sitting cross-legged on the ground and meditating with his eyes closed suddenly said, "All right, we've already fought. Let's not talk about spies and whatnot. Using merit to determine the enemy is what those righteous Tao sects do. The 6th demon sect also practices both Buddhism and demonic Tao. Could it be that the 6th demon sect is also a Buddhist spy?" The monk in black who spoke had the appearance of a middle-aged man. The black robe he wore looked like a kasaya, but at the same time, it didn't. There were all sorts of messy things like hell, lust, demons, and the Western paradise painted on it with golden patterns, making it look extremely evil. He had been fiddling with a string of prayer beads in his hand. Upon closer inspection, it turned out to be a skull carved from white bones. However, it emitted a jade-like luster, making it look a little strange. Although this black-robed monk had the appearance of a bald monk with a ring scar, no one would think that he was a benevolent Buddhist monk based on his attire. His aura was restrained, but he did not do it on purpose. Judging from the aura he exuded, one could tell that this monk was a martial Tao grandmaster, and was not someone to be trifled with. Mr. Lu said to Chu Xiao through telepathy, "He is the martial arts master of the 6th demon sect, Siddharthami. He is in charge of the sky of lust, one of the 6 great celestial realms of the 6th demon sect. He can trigger inner demons and kill people invisibly. He looks like an ordinary person, but he is an extremely difficult character to deal with." Chu Xiao nodded. He had naturally heard of the 6th demon sect. Its strength was definitely not weak. However, the 6th demon sect was located far away from the central plains in the Hainan Sea region. Therefore, its reputation was relatively small. The 6th demon sect cultivates both demons and Buddhists, but in reality, they cultivate evil demonic techniques that counter Buddhists. The 6th demon sect worshipped the demon king of the 6th heaven, who was also known as Devil Luo Buoxuan. His techniques leaned towards the spiritual aspect, and in particular, it could trigger the opponent's inner demons, causing them to go berserk and even cripple their cultivation. It was extremely evil and ruthless. Moreover, the martial arts of the 6th heavenly demon sect had a great restraining effect on Buddhist cultivators. Buddhist cultivators place great emphasis on the cultivation of their mental state. Once their inner demons were aroused, their cultivation would be crippled. Even their Buddhist cultivation would be destroyed, and they would directly fall into the path of demons. Therefore, the 6th demon sect was located far away from the central plains and kept a low profile. Otherwise, they would have been annihilated by the joint forces of the Great Light Temple and the Sabodhi Monastery. This time, the 6th demon sect acted as the middleman to mediate the conflict between the bright demons and the hidden demons. It was fine for both sides to have conflicts and fight to vent their anger, but it was impossible for them to really get into a fight. Looking at the people around him, Siddhari said calmly, "The people from the Omniscient sect and the Rakshasa sect haven't arrived yet. Everyone, take a break. It won't be too late to argue when they're here. Otherwise, if we end up fighting each other before we even see those from the Orthodox Tao, wouldn't that be a joke?" When the martial arts grandmaster spoke, Cho Xiangzi could only glare at Chu Xiu hatefully, and obediently returned to his seat. At that moment, Chu Xiu also came to a realization. No wonder there were so few martial arts grandmasters in the hall. It turned out that they were afraid that they would not be able to restrain themselves if they fought. Actually, apart from the independent cultivators, the factions that were qualified to participate in the Demon Dao conference this time all had a martial arts grandmaster behind them. However, not all of them could come. This was because if they all came, it would be as Siddhari said, and they ended up quarreling. When both sides fought, it would be very easy for them to end up badly injured. That would not be easy to clean up. Therefore, the representatives from both sides were only martial artists at the unity of heaven and man realm. Martial artists at this level were already the backbone of the major factions, and had the right to represent their respective sects, just like Mr. Liu and Cho Xiangzi from before. There were only 3 martial arts grandmasters in the entire hall, one each from the Bright Demons, the Hidden Demons, and the 6th Demon sect. One of them was the host and mediator, Siddhari. On the Bright Demons side, there was also a middle-aged martial artist in a loose black robe with a shady expression. However, Chu Xiu did not know which sect he was from. When Chu Xiu fought with Cho Xiangzi just now, he did not speak, and his expression did not even change at all. Clearly, he was not from the 5 Poison sect. On the other hand, the martial arts grandmaster from the Hidden Demons side was very strange. He was actually a slightly sloppy old man in a loose gray robe. From the moment Chu Xiu came in, he had been leaning on the chair with his eyes squinted as if he had not woken up yet, as if he did not care about anything at all. Seeing that things had come to an end, Mr. Liu pulled Chu Xiu over to the old man and bowed respectfully. "Senior Wei, this is the martial artist Lin Yi, who is representing the Shadow Demon sect to participate in the Demon Dao conference. He is a rising star of our Demon Dao, and his strength is extraordinary. Even the Saintess has praised him." As he spoke, Mr. Liu hurriedly said to Chu Xiu, "This is a senior of our Demon Dao, one of the 5 great sky demons of the 9th Sky Mountain, Jade-Face Sky Demon Wei Shuya." Chu Xiu bowed to Wei Shuya, but he could not help but reveal a hint of surprise in his eyes. Speaking of Wei Shuya, Chu Xiu probably could not remember who he was, but the 5 great sky demons of the 9th Sky Mountain were still very famous. 200 years ago, in the 9th Sky Mountain of Eastern Qi, 5 experts of Demon Dao joined hands and raised a big flag, calling on all the Demon Dao in the world to return to the Kunlun Devil cult and restore the Demon Dao to its former glory. These 5 people were all martial arts grandmasters, and together they were called the 5 Great Sky Demons. For a while all the rogue cultivators, Demon Dao martial artists, and some sects of the Hidden Demons sect responded, and their momentum was incomparably great. It actually had the momentum of the Demon Dao. Unfortunately, there was still a huge gap between the Righteous Dao and the Demon Dao. Under the cooperation of several big sects of the Righteous Dao, 4 of the 5 sky demons of the 9th Sky Mountain were killed, and the so-called Demon Dao alliance completely fell apart. That was also the last grand occasion of the Demon Dao. Since then, for 200 years, the Demon Dao had been keeping a low profile. For example, during the God Weapon Conference, the phaseless demon sex attack was considered to be on a relatively large scale. This jade-face sky demon, Wei Shuya, was the only survivor of the 5 sky demons of the 9th Sky Mountain. However, his lifespan was approaching 300 years, and he was almost at the end of his life. Therefore, there were rumors in the Jianghu that Wei Shuya was already dead. Unexpectedly, he was still alive, but his appearance was somewhat different from what Chu Xiu had imagined. Wei Shuya used to be called Jade-Face Sky Demon. He was extremely handsome and elegant, and he did not look like a murderer of the Demon Dao at all. He was clearly a gentleman of the Jianghu. It was said that in the past, Wei Shuya had a romantic past with the Taoist nun of the Zhenwu sect, the legitimate daughter of the 9 great families, and the sword fairy of the Yunnu Palace. However, no one except Wei Shuya knew whether it was a Jianghu rumor or a real thing. Wei Shuya waved his hand lazily and said, "What jade-face sky demon? The wrinkles on this old man's face are enough to kill a fly. Jade face. Little baby boy, you're quite good. Since you were chosen by that plum blossom, you definitely wouldn't be wrong." That girl was extremely proud and arrogant. If there wasn't a suitable candidate, she would rather not participate in this demonic path alliance meeting. Go back and save your strength. In a while, you'll have to fight with those people on the other side. But you don't have to be afraid. This old man is going to die soon. Whether they want to play dirty or not, I'll play with them. Wei Shuya did not hide his words. He said it in front of the bright demon lineage. It was obvious that he was referring to them. On the side of the bright demon lineage, the warrior shrouded in a black robe snorted coldly, but he did not say anything. He pulled Chu Xiu to the side and sat down. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said in a low voice, "Who's that martial arts grandmaster from the bright demon lineage?" Mr. Lu said expressionlessly, "His background is not simple. He's Mountain Ghost, one of the 9 god magi of the moon-worshipping cult. You should have heard of him." Chu Xiu nodded, and a strange look appeared in his eyes. Of course he knew this name. This was a big shot. The Miaojiang moon-worshipping cult's power was so great that it had almost become the #1 sect in the demon Dao. Even when the Kunlun devil cult's demonic power swallowed the heavens and suppressed the entire Jianghu, the moon-worshipping cult only chose to follow and not submit. Therefore, after the Kunlun devil cult was destroyed, the moon-worshipping cult managed to escape in time and was not implicated. Moreover, the moon-worshipping cult had countless powerhouses. On the surface, there were already more than 10 martial arts grandmasters, which could be compared to the Great Light Temple or the Celestial Master Mansion of Longhu Mountain. The top 3 powerhouses of the moon-worshipping cult were the sect leader, the high priest, and the witch. The witch's status was similar to that of Mei Qinglian's Yin demon sect saintess, second only to the sect leader. Other than these 3, the strongest ones in the moon-worshipping cult were the 9 god Magispriests. They were named after the 9 ghost gods in the legends of the ancient Miaojiang. They were the East Emperor Tai, Lord Yunzhongjuan, Great Lord Ximing, Young Lord Ximing, Lord Xiang, Lady Xiang, Lord Dong River Earl, and Mountain Ghost. These 9 were the 9 god magi of the moon-worshipping cult. Names were no longer important to them. From the moment they inherited the title of god magi, they were called by this name. Mountain Ghost could only be ranked last among the 9 god magi of the moon-worshipping cult, but he was still qualified to represent the moon-worshipping cult in the Demon Dao Conference. One could imagine the overall strength of the moon-worshipping cult. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.